Today we're going to talk about something that I think really gets to all of us. What happens when our perfectly made plans just fall apart? And what if that very moment of failure is actually the start of a way better plan, one that's running on a timetable that isn't our own?
Just take a second and think about a time when you had it all figured out. I mean, every single detail was planned, and then, poof, it all just unraveled. It's so frustrating, and honestly, sometimes it's pretty scary. I think we've all been there.
Let me tell you a quick story. So I was moving for the first time, from Toronto all the way to Vancouver. The schedule was super tight. I had my dog checked into cargo, and I was racing to the airport. But then, surprise, surprise, I hit this insane traffic. Then the security line was just crawling. I'm just watching the clock, and my heart is pounding louder with every tick. By the time I finally sprinted to the gate, it was too late. The door was closed, the plane was gone. And in that moment, my mind just went blank. Every single arrangement, every schedule I had made was just shattered. It felt like a complete and total failure. But here's where it gets interesting. The airline, thankfully, rebooked me on the very next flight, just an hour later, and they didn't even charge me. And get this, they gave me a seat with extra leg room. It was way better than my original one. And when I finally landed in Vancouver, guess what? The person picking me up was also running late. My new arrival time was unbelievably perfect. My plan failed miserably, but it was like I was put on a better connection. That whole experience really got me thinking about time, specifically this tiny little moment we call the present. It's this fleeting thing, right? It's this razor's edge between a past that's already gone and a future that hasn't happened yet. So if the present is so tricky to pin down, how are we supposed to actually live in it?
Well, it really boils down to a choice. We can choose to live in what you might call a pastified present. That's where today is completely defined and trapped by old hurts, by our failures, by all our disappointments. Or we can choose a futurified present, and that's a present that gets its life, its energy, and its hope from the promises of what's still to come.
So here's the bottom line. Which one are you living in right now? Is your today kind of stuck in the shadows of yesterday, or is it lit up by the promise of tomorrow? Because that choice, it really changes everything.
So where do we find the strength to live in that future-focused present? Well, the Bible gives us this incredible foundation for it. In the book of Isaiah, we find these amazing promises for a totally new reality, and they all kick off with this powerful, hope-filled phrase, "no more." It's like a signal of a complete and final break from all the painful things of the past.
First, there's a promise of just absolute peace. Can you imagine that? A life, a community, a world where violence and destruction are just gone, where your home and your heart are completely and totally secure. It's a promise of ultimate well-being. The next promise is just wow. The imagery is incredible. It says we won't need the sun or the moon for light anymore. And you think, why? Because God Himself, in all His glory, will be our everlasting light. That's talking about a direct, constant, unfiltered experience of His presence.
And finally, maybe the most personal promise of them all, a final, absolute end to sadness. Just think of every tear you've cried, every moment of grief, every day your heart has felt heavy. This promise says a time is coming when all of that will be completely and forever finished. Your sorrow will be ended.
Now, these amazing promises, they don't just pop up out of nowhere. They're actually the final step in this long journey we see all through the scriptures. A journey that often starts with a long time of hidden preparation, like Joseph in prison. It moves through times of recovery, like Elijah hiding in the cave. It's held up by a promise, like the one from Joel, and it all leads to this, the fulfillment of God's ultimate plan. So how does this incredible fulfillment even happen? Isaiah gives us a hint. He says that the thing that's small, the thing that seems insignificant, what feels like the least, it has the potential to grow exponentially. The smallest little group can become a mighty nation. It's a principle of divine multiplication. And this is a perfect picture of the parable of the mustard seed, isn't it? God's kingdom often starts with something that looks tiny, almost unimpressive to the rest of the world. A small act of kindness, a quiet prayer, one little step of faith. But when that tiny seed is planted, God makes it grow into something huge, something that gives life and shelter to others. Okay, so this brings us to the final, and maybe the most powerful piece of the whole puzzle. The very last verse in this chapter shows us exactly how God brings His promises to life. And it all comes down to two things, His timing and His speed.
So on one hand, There is a perfect time. That's God's when. It's a set moment in time. It's never late. It's never early. It's the absolute perfect moment for His plan to happen. But then there's this surprising speed. That's God's how fast. When that perfect time finally arrives, God can move with a swiftness that just blows all human expectation out of the water.
And here it is, the verse that just ties it all together. In its time, I, the Lord, will do this swiftly. See, there's a perfect time. And when it comes, He will act fast. This just resolves all that tension we feel, doesn't it? The tension between our urgent plans and God's perfect plan. We wait, and then suddenly, He moves.
So what do we walk away with from all this? I think we can boil it down to 3 things to remember. First, trust the timing, even when it feels agonizingly slow. Second, make that choice every single day to live in a present that's defined by hope, not by past failures. And third, never ever look down on your small beginnings. That tiny mustard seed of faith you have, it matters more than you can possibly imagine.
And that leaves us with one last question to think about. Knowing that God has a perfect time, and that when that time comes, He will move swiftly, how does that change the way you face your own seasons of waiting? How will you live today, right now, while trusting the promise of what's still to come?